60 years ago, a small group of believers gathered in Ipswich with a simple desire to build a church that honoured God and served their city. On April 25th, 1965, Anzac Day, Pastors Warren and Dot Martin, just 22 and 21 years old, began what was then known as the People's Church. The first gatherings were held in the CWA Hall on Limestone Street. There were no large crowds, no impressive facilities, just a people hungry for God. It was wholesome, it was raw, it was Pentecostal, and it was pioneering. Sunday school began early. Prayer was central. Families gathered week after week believing that God was doing something meaningful in Ipswich, and slowly the church began to grow. As the church grew, the need for a permanent building became clear. Land was purchased in Eastern Heights, and the church began the process of building. But the funds did not come from abundance, they came from sacrifice. Members baked and sold thousands of lamingtons to help finance the project. Kitchens became fundraising centres. Families gave their time, their labour and their resource. Faith was never theoretical, it cost something. And in 1971, a building opened on Robertson Road in Raceview. But even that journey was not without challenge. Unexpected foundation issues drained the original loan. Costs escalated. Families in the church personally guaranteed additional finance to make the project possible. This building was not simply constructed, it was believed into existence. In 1972, Warren and Dot Martin were called elsewhere. What followed was a transitional season carried by faithful leaders including Mr. and Mrs. Ludlow, Gerald Stewart, and Bob Knight. These names matter. They carried the church through change. In 1976, a new season of stability began when Barry and Yvonne Muller were sent from Mount Gravatt Assembly of God by Pastor Reginald Klimenok to lead the church. When Barry first began, the morning service only had 12 people, but under their leadership, the church began to grow. The church became known as Christian Faith Community Centre. Outreach expanded, youth ministry flourished, a Bible college was launched, and a larger brick auditorium seating around 300 people was constructed. Even that building required extraordinary faith. When it came time to put the roof on the auditorium, full funding had not yet been secured. Barry and Yvonne used their own home as guarantor to ensure the project was completed. For 15 years they served faithfully, concluding their leadership in November 1990. By the end of that era, attendance had grown into the hundreds. Faith step after faith step. But something deeper was also stirring. A growing sense that God was calling the church not only to care for its congregation, but to influence its city and beyond. In February 1991, Mark and Gail Edwards were inducted as senior pastors. Almost immediately, they faced significant challenges. In Pastor Mark's first week, he received a demolition notice from the Ipswich City Council. Parts of the existing building at the front of the auditorium were no longer compliant or safe, and urgent redevelopment was required for children's ministry, offices, and weekday kindergarten facilities. But the vision continued to grow. During this time, the church became known as Raceview Assembly of God and later Ipswich Region Community Church, reflecting a growing regional vision. And prophetic voices continue to speak about the future of the church. As the church continued to grow through the 1990s, leaders began to realize something important. The future God had placed in their hearts would eventually require more space and more land. But years before any land had been purchased, something remarkable had already happened. Back in the late 1970s, around 1980, Pastor Gordon Gibbs from Penrith Christian Fellowship Centre shared a prophetic word while ministering in Ipswich. He described a large block of land alongside a very major road with a clearly recognisable stump near the edge of the property. At the time, that road did not even exist in the way it would later be known. The visible reality had not yet caught up with the word. And there was also another layer to the story. Pastor Jeff Wilson was part of a church that had previously attempted to purchase that same parcel of land. They walked the land, they prayed, they believed. But even then, the journey was not simple. The church attempted to secure the land, but the full deposit could not be raised. 2 families in the church even sold their homes and offered the proceeds, but the money was returned in integrity. The land was not secured at the time. Still, Members of Vision would regularly travel out to the land to simply pray. Among them was Letitia Germain's grandfather. When they could not secure it, that church prayed faithfully that God would keep his hand on the land for another church. Years later, when leadership visited what is now the Ripley site, they immediately recognized it. The road, the land, and near the edge of the property, a stump. Seeds were sown in prayer long before possession came. Then, in 1998, the decision was made to find new land because the existing property was no longer suitable for growth. A 42-acre parcel of government land was identified, and there were clear statements that the land would not be sold at the price or in the time frame that was needed. Yet prayer continued. In 1999, the existing church property was sold, and for the next 2 years, the church became portable again, meeting in Ipswich Girls Grammar School and multiple other temporary venues. It was portable church once again. There were major setbacks. Builders went bust, plans were delayed, but God continued to provide a way. Then in October 2001, the doors of the current building opened. A miracle built on decades of prayer and sacrifice, and many hands helped to carry that miracle into being. Mark and Gail Edwards again used their own home as guarantor. Rex Hills played a critical role in forming a partnership with developers Painter Dixon. Matt Neal served as project manager, making crucial on-the-spot decisions under pressure. And when unexpected excavation required urgent funding, Pastor Wayne Cordero of New Hope International Ministry in Hawaii provided an immediate $100,000 loan. And leaders, including Pastor Roy Short, Kingsley Neal, and Darren Johnson, walked faithfully through difficult seasons with conviction. In time, the church embraced the name City Hope Church. A church that serves its city, a church that raises leaders, a church that sends people into their calling, a church that believes what God does here is never meant to stop here, and through the years, that story has continued to unfold. The vision of this church has never been simply about buildings. From the beginning, it has been about releasing life beyond its walls. In November 2023, leadership transitioned to Ryan and Letitia Germain. And since then, the church has stepped into a fresh season of stewardship and into what generations have prayed for this location. Expansive growth, salvations and baptisms, new families, increased impact. This church was carried by faithful leaders across generations. Warren and Dot Martin, Mr. and Mrs. Ludlow, Gerald Stewart and Bob Knight, Barry and Yvonne Muller, Mark and Gail Edwards, and now Ryan and Letitia Germain. Leadership here has never been about ownership, it has always been about stewardship. Today, we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us. Men and women who prayed, who sacrificed, who stepped forward in faith when the future was uncertain. The same faith that carried this church to the Ripley Valley is the faith that will carry it into the future. Let us never look back on those steps as history alone. Let them stir our hearts again, because the sacrifices that brought us here were never meant to end the story. They were meant to prepare us for the one that is still being written. This church belongs to God. Our responsibility is clear: to honor the past, steward the present, and prepare for the future. The story of this church is not finished. In many ways, it is only just beginning.